And I'd like to call together the March 28th, 2024 school committee meeting. For those that are able, if you would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This evening, we've got a consent agenda posted, which are the minutes from our March 14th, 2024 meeting, as well as the oath for bills and payroll. Is there a motion to accept? Motion made by Stacy, seconded by Elaine. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All set there. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. There'll be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting. So if there's anybody with us this evening that would like to speak before the school committee in the room or on Zoom, this is your first shot. One of two.
We do not have any.
All right. Close that portion of the meeting then. And we'll take this as an opportunity to hear some recognition. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Clenchey for recognition this week.
Student representatives are busy this evening, so
Correct.
I'll try to fill in for them. Last week, March 19th, we had another Connections evening series on Universal Design for Learning. I want to thank our staff for organizing that event and also for the parents who were able to come out that evening. This time of year, it's really hard to find a night that doesn't have 5 or 6 things going on, and I think we did hit one of those nights. So would like to see more families out, but you know, sometimes that just happens this time of year. So very worthwhile, and it was nice to be able to touch base with our community members that were there. Every year, the Rotary Club of Littleton sponsors a leadership academy called RILA, and it happens last weekend in June. And every year I have an opportunity, since I am a member of the Rotary, to interview sophomore students. We had 18 applications this year. Incredible young ladies and young men, wanting to have an opportunity to hone their leadership skills. The people around the table that were interviewing the students had a real tough time having to hone it down to 10 students. They were just all worthy of going. So I just wanted to let you know that we do that each year, and very proud of the skill sets that our students have at high school. And kudos to our students and teachers and families. When you interview students in a setting like that, their knowledge, their competence, and their ability to sell themselves comes out loud and clear. Credit goes to everybody to have students at that age have those kinds of skill sets. High school has changed a lot in the past 20 years, and we really focus on developing those skill sets so that they'll be prepared and ready for their next journey. We also had our annual literacy and math fair at Russell Street School that was packed full. It's always nice to see that event happen every year. And this year we invited the grade 2 family from Schcmte, which was a nice addition. So again, thanks for the staff and administration for organizing that event. It's a lot of work to put that event on, but it's very worthwhile for our students and community. Our LHS Drama Club put on another musical, Suzico the Musical, and it was another great performance. Our drama program is really strong in our school district, and special thanks to the cast and crew and to the directors of the play. And that's it for me to see.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Welcome. That's okay. So next up, we've got the Neshoba Valley Technical High School District Representative interview / appointment. We have members of the select board with us this evening, as well as town moderator Tim Goddard and our applicant for reappointment, Charlie Ellis, with us. What I'd like to do is at some point, I'd like to read Charlie's letter. So well done, but I'd like to turn this portion of the meeting over to Tim to run it, allow the select board to open their meeting, and then Tim will tell us exactly what needs to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the school committee.
Good evening.
Thank you. Long time here in Littleton. For review, some of you have done this many times before, and others, this might be the first time. The town of Littleton has 2 seats on the district school committee at Michelle Valley Technical High School, a voting member and an alternate. And it's done by population, and other towns have more members, but it's a 3-year term. And the term that's up now is the one that Charlie has been holding down for the past 14 years for town of Littleton, which is a long time. And it speaks to his commitment to education, and in particular, vocational education, although he was a member of this very board for 6 years as well. I think the board has his letter
We do.
in the packet, and it's very well done, and I want still on Charlie's thunder, he could speak to it himself. The nominating committee for the reappointment consists of the members of the school committee, 5 members, the present, 5 members of the select board and the town moderator. So it's a committee of 11, so the quorum is 6. So there have to be 6 members of those various bodies here tonight. And I think we have that now with 4 school committee members and 2 members of the select board present. And I understand there's 1 other member of the select board, Karen Morrison, who's online looking to participate remotely, which she can do because there's a quorum of the nominating committee present. Those are the rules of remote participation. If we didn't have that quorum in the room, you couldn't participate remotely, but Karen can, and we will call on her at the appropriate time to, hear what her vote is. But Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from Charlie as much as everyone else, and and he makes a very good, convincing case for why he should be reappointed. I think we're lucky to have him. So,
Great. Mr. Ellis?
Thank you. Thank you to the school committee, superintendent, select board, members of the town. Appreciate it. Serving 6 years on the Littleton School Committee many years back. And I was talking with Steve this evening, and we reminisced about the amount of time. And the last 14 years at Neshoba Tech, I've now reached the 20-year mark, which is a milestone for, I think, anyone who devotes time to a cause or a town, volunteering. Through the years, I've seen the Neshoba Tech grow and expand. This year will be at our maximum of 800 students, which is another milestone. We no longer can accept school choice because everyone in the towns gets first seat before we go out to school choice students. I've seen us grow over the last 10 years. We've written as a group and received almost $10 million in grants, which has enabled us to rebuild almost every single technical area to state-of-the-art capacity. But also it's taken away the burden from the towns, the 8 towns that support us. The 4 original, which is Littleton, Groton, Westford, and Chelmsford. The 4 that have joined through the years, Ayr, Shirley, Townsend, Pepper. So we're doing well. This is going to be a difficult year for us, though. I'm not sure everybody understands or knows, but 4 of our towns are looking at overrides. Unlike when I was on the Littleton School Committee, we only had 1 town to get our budget passed in, and we have 8 this year, and 4 are dealing with overrides. So this could be a very difficult year for the Neshoba Tech. We're hoping that it'll be a smooth transition and outcome, but just so everybody knows where we're at and what we're looking at. I can tell you that working at Neshoba Tech, also being a past student there out of the first graduating class, that it really takes more than just an individual on a committee. It has to be a committee that's united and working for one purpose, and that's student achievement. And as the chair of Neshoba Tech, that's what we've been doing for the last 6 years. And I think we've been very successful. Tonight, I'm looking for your support in being reappointed for another 3 years. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, questions for Mr. Ellis?
Anyone? Gonna make it easy for me? Thank you.
I just want to thank you for your many years of service. 20 years is incredible. And, when I enjoyed reading your letter and, you know, when you see all of your accomplishments all put down in one place, it's so impressive. And I do appreciate the perspective and wisdom that you bring to this position from all of the many years. So thank you for continuing to be willing to do all this.
I thought this year you should know what I'm really involved in too, so it's kind of expanded quite a bit.
Well, you're pretty famous around town, so I'm glad to know more.
Thank you, Charlie. I was gonna read the letter, but between Mr. Goddard and Mr. Ellis, but most of the highlights were covered. So I echo Elaine's comments and just thank you for your service. Doesn't go unnoticed. And you seems like you're doing excellent work over there.
Thank you.
Mr. Goddard?
With my understanding that the interested parties were asked to submit a letter of interest. And I believe Mr. Ellis was the only person, thankfully for us, who said he was willing to sign up again. That's the case, Superintendent?
Yes,
You don't
it
know of
is.
any other?
No.
Okay, so we can do a quick vote on this, except for the fact that we do have one participant who's remote. So unfortunately, the boards will have to vote by roll call. And so if the chairs of each of the boards would call the roll of their members to nominate Mr. Ellis to a 3-year term on the Neshoba Valley District School Committee. I think that would be in order. It would expire, I think, April 1st, 2027. It's a 3-year term. And I only know that because it's my birthday. So. April 1st, I believe. So, Mr. Chairman, if you want to.
Certainly. Would you, school committee motion will cover all boards?
Yeah, it will. Then we'll, yeah, because we're a committee, technically a nominating committee, but if you call the roll for the vote, that would be
Sure.
appreciated.
So I'll move that we reappoint Mr. Ellis for a 3-year term for the school committee at Neshoba Valley Technical High School. Second. Okay, so we'll ask Stacy,
Yes.
Vino,
Yes.
Elaine,
Yes.
Justin votes yes as well. Okay.
Yes.
Karen, can you hear us?
Karen, are you there?
Your phone number. Yeah. I think she's just
Hi, this is
muted.
Karen Morrison.
Hello, Karen, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Says I can hear you. Can you hear me? No, we can't.
Let's try again.
Still trying. How about now?
Yes, there we go. We can hear you.
Fantastic.
We're looking for we have a,
Karen Morrison votes aye.
oh, Karen.
I voted aye. And the
And
moderator.
I'm an aye as well.
votes aye as well.
Say it.
All right, so the vote's unanimous then to reappoint Mr. Ellis. I want to thank the board for taking time at tonight's meeting. Arrange this it's a triumvirate of appointment. So thanks again. So we'll
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
We'll close. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
good to see you again.
See.
Charlie, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Select Board closed their portion of the meeting, so we will get back to our regularly scheduled business. We've got 4 presentations this evening. The first of which, I'll ask Hillary Bridge to join us at the podium. But the high school band trip to Florida, February 2025. Music teacher Hillary Bridge will give a presentation on the high school band trip to Orlando, Florida.
Thank you. Hi, yes, thank you for having me tonight. As you can see there, we have taken this trip 4 times previously, and you can see some of the highlights in these photos of the things that we do on the trip. I did submit some paperwork. There we are on the plane, heading out there. That was in 2022. You can tell because we're all wearing masks. Interestingly, while we were there, Disney lifted their mask requirement. So it's like the second day that we were there. Right after our performance, that was us gathering in our hotel. They call it earning your ears. Disney makes a big deal of calling you all cast members while you're there, and you have to perform before you earn your ears, but then everybody gets their ears at the end. We always have a meal at the Planet Hollywood. If you've been to the Planet Hollywood at Disney Springs, they have a huge screen. And they always do a good job of highlighting each of the groups. So they spend some time like focusing the cameras on our group and playing little snippets of our performance so the rest of the restaurant can see what we've done too. So they're watching us on the screen. That's part of our workshop, where we get to work with Disney professionals, learning Disney music, learning about sound engineering, what it's like to be a professional musician, rehearsing music with new people that we've never rehearsed music with before. And it's a 2.5-hour workshop, but it passes very quickly. That one was at 11 o'clock at night. Disney runs 24 hours a day. I learned that very quickly. Yes. There we are on the bus. That was the 2019 trip, I believe.
Yep.
Yes. After we had earned our ears, some of our performance highlights. We typically travel in February, so the weather is far nicer usually in Florida than it is in Massachusetts. So we're absorbing some of the sunshine there. Again, at the Planet Hollywood. That was our workshop in 2019 in a much different facility. And that was 2016 in our workshop. And our performance in the same hotel, you'll see it's a bigger group the second time. So, and that was the very first trip, only 21 students. That was in 2013 and years ago. So we've had a great time going over the years. So it's time for us to ask for permission to travel again. You may have noticed in the paperwork that I have 2 proposals. Because we have been able to expand our chorus through Chorus Club, students in chorus have always wondered, well, when do we get to go to Disney? And Disney has a 15-person limit. You have to have at least 15 people in your ensemble in order to be accepted. And I haven't had 15 people in chorus until now. So you have to make the plans very far ahead of time. So I had the travel company give me 2 proposals just in case you don't have enough students willing to commit from chorus. So you'll see that there are 2 proposals. One is if just the band travels, and the other is if I'm able to bring both the band and the chorus. The trip itself would remain largely the same for the students. It would be a little bit more busy for me, but that's okay. And the price is only very negligibly different between the 2 different numbers of students traveling. So the trip does include the travel agents that we have all of our meals covered, hotel, flight, workshop, Disney tickets, just about everything. Students really only need to travel with spending money if they want, but all of their meals are also covered. We perform at Disney Springs. If you are familiar with Disney Springs, there's the waterside stage that's across from the Lego store. And then the Rainforest Cafe is right behind it. So if you, that kind of scenario, we get to have a performance there. And every year that I've done this, I've always thought, I can't imagine spending time on my vacation stopping to watch a high school group, but I'm always shocked at how many people actually do come to watch the performances. We also get the opportunity to watch other groups too while we're there. Last time we were there, we watched a band from Hawaii that came and performed. I just couldn't think of the logistics of how on earth did they get all their instruments from Hawaii to Florida. That is certainly a logistical issue, but it was really interesting to get to see other instruments and other groups perform. So we have that performance. Disney makes a really good scenario about students becoming cast members, and they give them like official pins that they're Disney members now. We have a performance and then our workshop, typically not on the same day. And the workshop, like I said, includes Disney professionals that come in and work with the group. But the surprise that the students don't know about, or they will now, is that there is a sound engineer that's present but doesn't get introduced until about halfway through. And the engineer records everything that happens to that point. So he surprises them by playing back things for them that they had no idea that they were being recorded for. And then the workshop switches over to sort of a sound engineering perspective. So the students get to learn about live recording and where the microphones are and why we do what we do. And the final result of the workshop is we perform Disney music to a track of the movie playing in front of them. So the last time we went, forget what it was, maybe it was The Lion King. We played for some songs for The Lion King and watched the movie while they were performing it. In the end, we get the screen of The Lion King with us performing the music in the background. So yeah, that's always very neat. I haven't done the vocal workshop yet, so I don't know what the vocal workshop will be like, but I imagine it would be very similar to the band workshop. Disney also has a lot of great opportunities for college students. So it's a good time for outreach if kids are potentially interested in that. They hire a lot of college students to work on their campus and offer scholarships. They have a cruise line where students can perform and earn money for college by performing on the cruise line. So there's a lot of great outreach information. And then of course, there's also Disney. So, so hopefully, with your approval, we'll be able to take this trip in February of 2025. That would be over February break. So students wouldn't be missing any instructional time. Do you have any questions for me?
Did the students do any fundraising for this?
So we typically have a fundraiser every year. We have a Sweets and Sweets performance in November that acts as a fundraiser, and that gets held every year. And we run traditional fundraisers. Also, we haven't done one yet this year. I've been a little bit behind the ball, but we've done everything from we've had mattress sales to we sold socks. We've done a donation drive, all of those different scenarios. So we do have fundraisers, and that's why we also only travel every 3 years. So we can kind of build up enough money to have a good cushion for the trip.
What portion of the fee are you able to fundraise? The families come out of pocket?
Families come out of pocket. The money I typically set aside for any students who can't afford to come. I've never had to say no to a student.
Excellent.
So every single time, every kid who wants to go gets an opportunity to go.
No, I have no issues with the out-of-state travel. It's a wonderful experience. Thank you for doing it.
Sure.
Every 3 years is nice because everyone gets a crack
Exactly.
at it. And like you said, the fundraising efforts build up over time. So nothing from me.
No. Do you have other adults go with you? That's.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. It's like, that's a lot to take on.
No, I try to keep it to 1 adult per 10 kids.
There you go.
Yeah, so if we have about 60 traveling, there'll be 6 adults.
I feel better for you now.
Thank you. The trip itself runs very smoothly. The airport is really the only time that I need that many adults.
Yeah.
But once we're there, Disney, I mean, if you've been, you know, they run a very tight ship.
You must also be exhausted when you come back
Oh, yes.
from vacation,
Yeah.
needing another vacation.
Exactly.
There's also a reason why I don't make it last the whole February. We come back usually on Wednesday or Thursday, so they still have a few days to settle back in and for me to settle back in.
Smart.
Yeah.
Someone want to make that or you want me to make it?
So it's right in the agenda.
Yeah, I move to approve the high school band trip to Orlando, Florida, February 2025 to participate, in principle based upon the information provided.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Elaine. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous.
Great, thank you so
Good
much.
luck. Good luck with the fundraising.
Hillary,
Thank you. Yes, the band will be very happy to hear this tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
thank you so much for
Great.
continuing on with this trip. I mean, it's a huge commitment in terms of organizing and you're going during part of the February break. So just wanted you to know that we really appreciate what you're doing.
Great,
So thank you.
thank you.
Next up, presentation 2, DEIB, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging update. We're going to hear from the principals. Got 40 minutes scheduled for this, so see how we do. Any order you like?
Anywhere I like?
Any order?
We're gonna go together because we did last year.
Great.
Oh, you read first, do good work. Right, over here. I think this first. Oh, you have it. So, when we put this presentation together, we were really thinking about DEIB in terms of elementary. So, Shaker Lane and Russell Street kind of together. So Shaker Lane first. There we go.
So DEIB at Shaker Lane and the connections to Shaker Lane. First and foremost, our PACE integration. I don't know if all of you are familiar with our PACE program. But what happens with the PACE program is our children live in substantially separate classrooms, and they are integrated into our general education classrooms different amounts of time depending on the needs of the student and their abilities. But what that really does is it really offers a sense of belonging for everyone and acceptance of other children, even if they may be different than the rest of the children in the group. We're very proud of that. And as we get more children in that program, the more the kids are integrated into all the classrooms. So we're very proud of that. Staff-led diversity reading, PD. There was a couple first grade teachers, I believe it was two first grade. Staff can sign up to teach professional development to the other staff members. And so there were two first grade teachers who taught a professional development on building a diverse classroom library. So the teachers really have been spiffing up their libraries with lots of texts that show different cultures. It was a great PD. Diversified staff, I think we've really been starting to hire a lot more diverse staff in recent years, and they are more than welcome. Morning meetings, closing circles, and I don't know, Sherry might have the same things, but morning meetings and closing circles at Shaker Lane are really that time in the morning for children to be together. They are talking about themselves. They talk, they get to know one another. It's building that community, a sense of belonging for the kids. It's really a beautiful way for kids to really get to know one another. School mission statement. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this year. Shaker Lane really has been focusing. We've done a lot of work, Mrs. Kane and I, over the summer with creating a mission for our school, where the staff all got to get together and come up with all these sayings. And then we took everybody's thoughts and put them into one mission statement. So our mission statement at Shaker Lane is we are building a safe, caring, and ready to learn environment, which directly ties into DEIB. And I do want to say last week at the district-wide DEIB meeting, we all got the chance to work in small groups, and we were talking about the word belonging, and we were talking about what does it mean to each of us. And so we all put it on a document, and then Lynn went through and she highlighted words that popped up from everyone. And one of the biggest words that popped up in everyone's definition was the word safe. So I think that is a word that across the board, preschool through high school, community, everybody that was there, that's what comes to mind when you think about that acronym. Connecting heart and DEIB, if you guys are familiar with heart, especially the A for acceptance. We're really focusing a lot on the A and acceptance and trying to build in the diversity, equity with our acceptance motto. School-based cultural committee, that's been ongoing for a couple of years now. Monthly diversity readings. Michelle and I go into classrooms. Each month we choose a different book. Cheryl brought one too. So these are just some of the titles. Different, A Great Thing to Be. This one is, Michelle help me, Solway. I actually wasn't here for this story. I was on medical leave, but this is actually one of Mrs. Kane's absolute favorites. So we choose a different story. The teachers sign up. We come into class and read. It is amazing what little friends come up with, because we always say to them, by the end of the story, what is the message that this author is trying to tell you? And kids as young as 5 years old come up with the most beautiful messages. So we will continue that. Weekly affirmations, just for an example, this week's affirmation, Michelle and staff who do morning announcements. We have a weekly affirmation every week, and this week's just happened to be no one better to be than myself. So we announce it, we all say it together, and the teachers in the classroom really highlight that throughout the week. And then I think I already touched upon the diversity titles in classroom libraries. That's where we are with connections at Shaker Lane.
Thanks. When Michelle and I were first sitting down a bit ago to really talk about what we wanted our slides to be, I think one of the things that we chatted about was, when DEI and then DEIB first came on, like really what we're doing in terms of this. And I think the intentional connections was really important when we were talking about this. These are the things that, these may be things that we were doing prior to DEIB, but now there's intentional content around them. And I think we had a long discussion about that when we were creating our slides. And I think, that, you know, the connection between Shaker Lane and when students come up to Russell Street is important too. So in terms of at Russell Street, we have had this several members on the DEI committee since day one. They have attended every single meeting, and that really helps with the continuity. At Russell Street, we have school-wide meetings as well, similar to Shaker Lane, where students are able to demonstrate their talents and their knowledge. We have intentionally been attending to diversity in staffing, so really looking, this has been a conversation in the DEI meetings, but really looking through and with the goal of having staff in our buildings that represent the students that we have in our buildings. And that's, you know, that's something that we really are intentionally working on. Attention to all of our individual subgroups. Just Tuesday of this week in our admin council meeting, we were looking through all the different information in our subgroups from MCAS testing. But I can't say enough about the Cultural Council and LEF and also the PTAs at our schools. I think all 4 schools have amazing PTAs, but they are instrumental in helping bring you know, presentations and presenters and really culturally rich experiences to our schools and bringing the suggestions and the funding. So really shout out to all of those groups. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but Leah Bodko, our food director, has brought to our monthly menus different food choices that are a little bit more cultural or attending to the differences in how students eat. So I wrote some examples. So Meatless Mondays, for example, she's adding chicken, fajita bowls, and masala, if I'm saying that right, a falafel with hummus, and a chicken enchilada empanada that I had for lunch last week. That was delightful. And so she's really is being conscientious about having kids try things that might not be something that they ordinarily eat. So really kudos to Leah and the kitchen staff. We have PACE at our school, PACE classroom in our school as well as a CASE classroom. And Dr. Clinch, you talked about the PACE program several meetings ago. And we have opportunities for students to be included at Russell Street in class to the greatest extent that they are able, as well as in unified arts classes out on the playground. It's really rich experiences for our students, as well as for the PACE and CASE classroom students. And really the focus is on building community. You know, I think we have added, it sounds funny, but the change to the rectangular tables that you've heard about in the cafeteria really changed the way our kids are able to sit together versus the round tables with 8 kids that, you know, when I think back on it, was really quite exclusive, and there was lots of arguing and fighting around who were the 8, and if there was 9, who would go sit with the other one, and it was this sort of really problematic. Now that I think about it in retrospect, and the rectangular tables, everyone just kind of sits, and there can be little spaces, and kids, you know, can sit across from each other. There can be large groups or small groups, and it works perfectly. We've added picnic tables to the outdoors, so that has created some spaces there, and also I thank Steve for the gated off space in front of Russell Street that has created additional safe space where kids can bring their lacrosse sticks in the spring and toss the ball in that driveway area, and it's created additional space all around building community. I think I go next. Then educational activities at Russell Street. Similarly, we have our Book a Day program, and I've spoken about it before. I have a whole bunch of examples, but I picked this one, Koki in the City. This is about a little boy named Miguel who moves from Puerto Rico to the United States, and all of his concerns about coming from Puerto Rico to the United States and what his coming to school is like. And we actually have a new student named Miguel. So this is a great book that we have shared, but it really, you know, we have hundreds of titles like these and like those that really share with kids the perspective of another child. And so sometimes it's a book that we pick specifically because we want to focus on something, and sometimes it's just a random book that gets picked out of the Book a Day. for discussion. These, even at our level, 3, 4, and 5, these are books that take, you know, a handful of minutes to read through. It's a picture book, not a whole ton of words, but there's a lot of meaning behind all of these books. So it's a wonderful program. We've had cultural presentations and programs. Colors of Mexico Dancers was something that 4th grade had, and that was funded by the LEF and PTA, I believe. We did, we and the middle school did these, that many of you probably brought these home, had these come home to you. These, this lamp painting right before Diwali. This was an amazing project. This one's not all the way finished, but this was a wonderful project that I couldn't believe how beautiful they came out just with a couple of colors and little dots. They're beautiful. And every single kid in our school brought one home. So it was amazing. I don't know whose this is. I think this might be an adult spot. That was a wonderful project that Jason might talk about too. Some other educational activities. Our 5th grade does a project called Box of Hopes and Dreams, and it's really connecting with other classmates, just people's similarities and differences, and what we appreciate about each other, our classmates. Just last week, we did our first annual door decorating contest. That was really quite interesting. The classrooms got together and figured out all they had to do was decorate their door with the theme of spring. And it was kind of amazing how the doors came out. And then we invited people to come and judge, and Lynn and Beth both came as judges, and were telling me at the end how hard it was to pick because they were all so good. So kids had a great time with that. And that again was to build classroom community and then community throughout the building. The classrooms toured through to see what how the other doors came out, and it was really great. Thinking about the larger community, we, like other schools, do a food drive in November. It's always a really popular thing. Hundreds of pounds of food gets delivered over to Loaves and Fishes, and it's really for kids to understand that they live in a larger community where people might have need. 4th grade did birthday boxes in the past, and again, that's, you know, I think it's hard for most of our students maybe to think about not being able to have a birthday party with a cake and, you know, fancy plates and the tablecloth and all that. And these birthday boxes are created to make sure it's really a birthday party in a box with, you know, a cake mix and a frosting mix and all of the fixings for someone to be able to have a birthday party for their child. And they created, I think, more than a dozen of those that went out this year. We have recently a bulletin board that's created that was for Black History Month that students worked on. That was just a wonderful addition in the month of February. Like most schools, we do a random acts of kindness week. And that was something that went throughout the school building community as well. Addition of some specific curricular materials. 5th grade, for example, has added 2 titles. Esperanza Rising is one. And the story of Jackie Robinson is another that kids focus on. Esperanza Rising in the fall and Jackie Robinson in the spring. And then some collective activities. The art show that's collected between Russell Street and Shaker Lane has been absolutely wonderful to see. The work is stunning, and it's to see the trajectory from young up to grade 5 is amazing, and certainly a credit to our art teachers in the district. The townwide band concert, a 5 through 12 activity that has, you know, again, we talked about it a few meetings ago, but to be able to hear what 5th grade band sounds like versus 12th grade band, and to give students the perspective of, you know, this can be me in a couple of years is really great. And also, Dr. Clenchey mentioned our Spring Festival for Math and Literacy added grade 2 this year. And so it wasn't just a Russell Street event, it was a 2 through 5 event. And I was commenting the other day that it would have been great to have a video of the very beginning of that when there was students clustered outside the door before I unlocked it. And I was telling them, you have 3 minutes to wait. And they were jumping up and down. I'm like, you're literally cheering to come in and do math and reading. And they were banging on the door, let us in, let us in. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful community event.
You were there, it was
packed.
It was
And awesome.
I know I saw Mr. McCarthy. But anyway,
Shaker Lane. So if any of you had the pleasure to come to our very first cultural fair that Mrs. Kane, she put a committee together. She was the leader of that, and they put on the very first cultural fair at Shaker Lane in the fall, where families actually signed up and they came in and they set up in the gym and really showcased their culture, whether it was food or dance or art or clothing. And then everybody was able to come through and get a really nice sample of different cultures that are families from Shaker Lane. I'm pretty sure that's going to continue. And I really see that getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there was a really nice turnout too for our first time. So that was wonderful. Just this week, we did the first grade team, especially, they all do the beautiful Holy celebration. We've had families coming in to do lots of presentations of different things in the classrooms. Day of the Dead, Diwali, and then just today, we had an Italian family come in, and I don't know if I'm gonna say this right, because I'm Portuguese, but Pizza de Pasqua, I think they call it. It's Italian Easter. And so they came in and talked all about the traditions of the Easter holiday, but in the Italian way, and they shared a celebration. The little girl came down to share, she had brought in these I guess you'd call them little pizzas, but they actually had Cadbury mini eggs in them instead of real eggs, so they're delicious. It was just wonderful for her to be able to explain, her holiday, it's gonna look a little different probably at her house. So that was wonderful. At the beginning of the school year, we actually have several teachers that send out family surveys to their families, obviously, but it just doesn't ask about the child, but it asks about their culture. And what is special about you and your family, and what are you willing to come in and share? And a lot of times that's where teachers actually gather a lot of their information from and invite families in to share about their culture. Community meetings at Shaker Lane are huge. We have one every single month. We just had one today. The entire school gathers together. Every preschool through grade 2, every classroom is in the cafeteria, sitting, participating, sense of belonging. Everyone feels welcome. And each community meeting really has a focus. It focuses on heart predominantly. But we also have a compassion, I would say compassion projects that get linked to it as well, to show heart to our community. And to show that there are people who may need our help, who may be different than us. And so our next one coming up is actually our wish project for Mother's Day. And that is the kids and the parents are going to donate supplies for, I would say, battered and or homeless women who are living in a shelter. And so we gather all these supplies, and then we gather in the library at Shaker Lane, and we create Mother's Day bags for these women, and then they are shared with them. Trying to get the children to really understand about empathy and compassion in a way of accepting others, I think, is our goal at Shaker Lane. Anything else? We've done the Veterans Day, Compassion Project, the Anton Cleaners one, the coat drive was unbelievable. Then I don't even remember how many, I was gone by the time that finished, but 200 and something coats were donated that we gave away to, children and women and men of, just fine with the coat for the winter. So that's where we are so far.
So in the next slide, we really want to, next is really, if you look down in the presentation, just a continuation of what we are doing now. Continue to have the staff focus on DEIB, attention to community, obviously at both schools, concentrate on diversity in staffing, continue to do that, and also to continue with cultural presentations like we have been doing, and kind of make those rich experiences for our kids.
Yeah, so Mrs. Roper, she's actually the bottom one. She's our first grade teacher. She's actually spearheading a new program where it's probably gonna be focused more next year, really kind of getting off its feet, but where she's going to actually be having families record read-alouds and then send those in, and then those will be shared. We don't have all the details yet, but the families will actually be recording read-alouds that they're doing, and then that's going to be shared out electronically, obviously, where other families can then join in and listen to other families reading stories. And then we're also going to be looking for family presentations to come into community meetings. So it's not just always Mrs. Kane, Mrs. Garlisi, you know, doing the presenting at community meetings, but offering for other people and other families to come into our community meetings and share things with the whole Shaker Lane community. Diversity reads in newsletters. Did I miss that one?
We're going to start that next year. We're going to start putting out, you'll see it, and there's one coming out this week. We're going to start sharing what we're doing for diversity reads in the classroom. And a lot of teachers are actually putting newsletters together. Ms. Ducey's one of them. Who's putting newsletters together with the diversity reads that they're reading in the classroom. If you walk down the first grade hall, you'll actually see a poster, like what the highlight is this week. Something that we're working on. Just getting that information more out to parents in real time and not at these meetings.
That's Shaker Lane, Russell Street.
You are doing so much with so much passion and commitment. You must have been amazed yourself when you put it all down in one place.
Sometimes, you know, and then you hand it off, like Michelle handed it off to me, and then I'll remember things. Oh, yeah, we did that, right? Or, you know, you don't realize sometimes how much you really are focused on doing really good work.
You know,
Until sometimes you have to actually write it down, right?
and I'm sure the families are very grateful as well. Thank you.
Daniel or Stacy, questions or comments?
No, I just want to comment on the books especially because I think it's so, you know, literacy obviously is like so crucial in early childhood, but every time I've walked into the library, I was there at the literacy and math event and it's just the educator in me. I look at the books and it is an incredible collection that really like represents and shows each child that we have in the building and the ones that are not. And that's really important too. And so to librarians and to you all, there's a lot of intentionality there. Thank you.
Came up a couple times in the slides, the diversity in staffing. So sort of like a self-evaluation. Do we feel that we have a diversity among staff that matches the population of the students? Shaking our heads no.
I still think there's work to do.
Yeah, there's still work to do. I mean, I think one of the things that we talked about at the very initial DEI meeting is really how to put that out when we're advertising for staff that we're looking for diversity in the people that we hire. And so, you know, and so I think, you know, that is something that we talked about as a committee, and certainly for those of us who look through all the resumes and see who's applied, I think, you know, the intentionality is to really look through and see who we have and who might be a good fit in the building. Obviously, we want to take the best candidate, obviously, but I think that's another piece.
We talked with Dr. Clenching, sorry, I think it was an admin council actually at the end of last year, or maybe it was the beginning of this year, but we really talked about how do you spread the word too, right? About hoping that diverse populations apply for these jobs, right? Because you can only select from who applies, right? And so sometimes you have a very limited pool, but I think you know, hopefully it'll just grow so that our pool becomes wider. And so then we can be more selective or less, I don't know, less selective, I don't know what I'm looking for, but the more people that apply, the more diverse we can hire. So that becomes a challenge. So.
And every district is looking for diverse.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, just us hiring a male gym teacher this year was, I mean, just, it was a game changer. I mean, the relationship that these children have formed with a male teacher is amazing.
As the diversity continues to change in our community, our applicant pool will begin to change as well.
I think so.
Probably lags a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely getting people from the community and sometimes parents, right, of students. You know, hopefully we just continue down that path. The people we've hired are wonderful, wonderful.
Can you just speak about the bullet point here, attention to the subgroups? I think you mentioned it was the subgroups within the testing. What sort of work's being done there?
Sure. I think, again, it's just something that we're doing in a conscious way. We've always looked at subgroups, but really to look through all the individual subgroups and to compare how everyone is doing and really to be able to, if there's something to focus on it. I think it's just the intentionality of that task, I think was why I put it there. Is just to look and see, like, do we have a subgroup that's not doing as well as another subgroup, and what do we need to do about that? you know, I think it's an important thing to focus on.
For sure.
And that'll come up in a couple of presentations
You-
from now when we talk about Student Opportunity Act. So.
Good.
Yeah.
And I just said I really appreciate having kindergarten and second grader, and you guys really weave the DIB into the curriculum in a very like natural way that doesn't make it seem like it's something that's different, that calls it out to the kids. So I really do appreciate that. So I think that's just a really great foundation for the kids to have. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's really great progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Did we cover everything?
Are we clapping
Oh,
for Jason
exactly.
coming?
No.
Before I begin, I just want to thank school committee for providing the parting gifts for all the presenters. I'm going to take the Instapot with me one day. So a lot of what I say is gonna mirror what Cheryl and Rebecca just talked about. So I'll cruise through pretty quickly. You know, in terms of the intentional things that we're doing at the middle school, the Playbook Initiative, which we've talked about a number of times, continues to thrive and go. And so that's something that we want to continue to do as we move through the years and really build that up. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Wanted to touch on, Cheryl mentioned the DIAs. It was a great activity. It was something that one of our PTA members had brought up, and PTA actually did the work to connect with the Littleton Cultural Council. And they set up everything. It was fantastic. We didn't really have to take care of anything. They came in, they put the tablecloths down, they brought in the dias, they brought in the paints and the tea lights. So dia is just a little clay, lamp that are used not just for Diwali, but in a number of areas. And so it was a great opportunity for kids not only to learn about the holiday, but it was more of a cultural connection than just we want to understand a holiday. And so getting the kids to actively participate, I think, was key. And it was fantastic to see kids who normally you would not think would be interested in something like this really get into it. It was quite impressive what they were able to come up with. Their fine motor skills are clearly better than mine, because mine did not turn out anywhere near as nice. But it was great, and they came in and they saw all 3 grades, and we were able to process them through. Given our schedule, it was a real great opportunity, and something that I look forward to doing again. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a second as well. One of the things that we're also doing, we put a lot of time and effort into our advisory, and one of the things that we did this year is to have student focus groups, one from each grade. So myself and the adjustment council, we met with students from all 3 grades separately to talk about, is advisory working for you? Is there a sense of belonging? Are we creating opportunities for everybody to be a part of something like this, rather than just those that are most talkative or those that want to dominate the conversation? And so it was really helpful for us to be able to get it from the student perspective, in terms of like what's going well. I often do this thing, keep, stop, start. Like, what should we keep doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we start doing? And the kids were great in terms of providing the feedback. And there were certain things that they said, yep, we really like, the circles, and we really like the conversations. We want to, add certain things and certain things to stop. And so it was really helpful for us to be able to bring in more of that conversation, and really to help tailor this to what the kids want. Because really, at the end of the day, this belonging is about the students' belonging. And we want to create a program that certainly allows us to do that. And so the first step was to create these focus groups, and we'll continue to do so periodically throughout the year and into the years to come. In addition to that, student surveys, we want to hear from the students. Our goal is to get as much feedback from the stakeholders as we can. I know as educators, we plan a lot of things, but at the middle school, for those of you that have teenagers or have had teenagers, how hard it is to get that investment. And so what we want to do is find out from them, what's going well, where are the areas, the problem areas, where are the things that you really do feel included. And so wanting to continue that, use that to inform the next set of things that we want to do to make sure that we keep up with the diversity and inclusion. So, like Cheryl and Rebecca, some of these things are just a continuance of what's already going on. We're going to continue to update the school library and have more of these books that represent our population. I know Julie Weir, who was one of our TAs, who also has a librarian certification, has been instrumental in this, working with Paul Orzik at the library and with Bastille to help build a collection of readings that really are able to reach out and continue to do so and stay at the forefront of some of these titles, so that we're not just circulating books that are 15, 20 years old, but really, in line with what kids want to read. Obviously, continue to review our curriculum and find those opportunities to present inclusivity when they arrive. So doing that through the advisory program, as I said, taking those surveys and those focus groups and really tailoring it so that as we move forward, it becomes a living thing, not just something that's a canned program that we just roll out every year. We want it to be different every year. We want it to be reflective of our students, as well as the implementation of UDL practices. And I can't understate, or I can't overstate the amount of inclusion that comes with UDL when it's done right. Because now we're taking students' experiences, we're taking their cultural values, and we're weaving it into what we're doing, and so that it becomes flawless, so that it's not an effort to reach out and include, it's just part of what we do. So what's next at LMS? One of the things that I would like for us to do is Lynn and Matt Levangie worked really hard to do these, to provide these trainings for kids and have kids working together. I want to see us take that next step where now we start having those ambassadors working with the rest of the student population, rather than just keeping it in that spot. And I know Lynn has a greater vision for it as well. And so that's what I'd love to see as we start to end of this year to begin the next, is how do we bring those learnings and those understandings to the groups at large? And how do we train our students to lead a group of students that normally an adult would lead? And what does that look like? How do you facilitate that conversation with people who haven't been through the training, with students who might not be as open to share? So the long-term vision that I have for this is to be able for the ambassadors to do the work to include each other rather than the adults working. Obviously, we want to support that, but I think it's going to be so much more meaningful if the kids are working to include each other. The second bullet, enhance our outreach program. And this gets back to some of the things that we've talked about in the past with UDL and two-way communication. What I really want to focus on, we have so many families who we email, we call, we don't receive that information back. And so how do we reach them? That kind of belonging doesn't just limit to the students, right? Because if the parents aren't supported or feeling engaged, we really can't have you can expect the students to feel that. So what we really want to do is figure out how do we do that. And we've done outreaches where we've gone in the community and we've hosted potlucks and we've done that kind of stuff. But I want to do more. So for example, one of the things that I'm pushing is really working on families. And it's not a new idea, but I think sometimes we just have to reintroduce it. When you catch a kid doing something right, not just send an email. Email is so personal. So I had custom postcards made. And we send postcards. I sent 2 yesterday and a couple last week to families just to say, you know what, your kid did something great. And we wanted you to know in the moment, even though it might take a couple of days for the postcards, there's something about, I think, tangible, holding on to a postcard that you can put on the refrigerator, and it can be a source of conversation rather than an email that may just only be half read because somebody's checking through at work. And so it's those little things that aren't, like I said, reinventing the wheel or creating something new. We're just reintroducing old concepts, but hopefully applying a little bit more meaning to them. And then finally, the cultural experiences. I was so impressed with the Littleton Cultural Council. And so it's on us to reach out and find these places. We were very fortunate to have PTA who already had a connection, but we as a school have to do a better job of figuring out what's in our community. Who are those groups that we can reach out to rather than waiting for somebody else to bridge those gaps for us? It's important for me and my admin team to start to look in our community and see what's available. So that's something that we want to do, as we end the year and begin the next. That's it.
Awesome. For Principal Everhart, comments?
I love the postcards that you're sending,
Yeah.
and all up to the parents. I think all of this is great, but that is a really good personal touch that I really feel like you're kind of engaging with the parents in a different way that is a little bit more personal. And I probably think the kids probably really appreciate that too, that you're getting that personal touch. I think that's a really, really good idea.
And for families that just had poor experiences when they were kids in school, for kids that the only time they hear from admin is when it's that phone call. Every time I call home, there's a pregnant pause because they know it's coming, and sometimes it's not that. And so this disarms that. And if we can do that enough, hopefully we can start to grow, because if we work on the kids and we work on the parents, the goal is to meet at the middle. And so rather than coming up with something radical, let's do what we know it works, but be consistent about it. And so every once in a while, we just have to remind ourselves that sometimes the simplest things are the best things.
Great idea. I think one question that just came up in my head is middle school is a really great time for kids to start participating in clubs and creating their own clubs. Are there what are the type of clubs that the middle schoolers are exposed to that can kind of exemplify the diversity and equity and all of the different things that they're starting to deal with in those middle school ages.
Right, because, you know, our middle school doesn't have, we haven't really had an opportunity to focus on, you know, clubs that whose primary focus is diversity and equity. But rather trying to bring groups into things that all kids can enjoy, rather than finding traditional ways. And more than just like video game clubs or other things, but finding things like, it's again, it's a simple thing, but it isn't. Starting a chess club this year, right? Most of us, when we went through school, had chess clubs and it kind of fell away, whether it's the Queen's Gambit or something else. There's this resurgence in chess, but that's something that goes across all cultural backgrounds, like mathematics, right? It's not something that's limited to a certain experience. Anyone can experience that connection with chess. So it's going back to those things. We have students who want to start a debate club, right? So there will be opportunities for platforms to be able to discuss these topics with other students, and how the kids are having to be thoughtful and mindful about it. So as we begin to expand our reach, hopefully that will start to be reflected in some of the clubs that we offer.
So usually it's kind of something that's student led, like just a little more organic as to what the kids are interested in, or?
That's generally how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some clubs that we do every year. Archery club, for example, draws huge numbers, and
Yeah.
so there are some things that we do every year. But we also want students to come up with ideas, and so when they do, and we get a teacher to sponsor it, we put that in there. So we don't just provide students, well, here's our list, and you have to pick from that. If they have something that they want to do that they would find valuable, especially something like this, you know, one of the things that we really love to see is, you know, like a Gay Straight Alliance or other clubs
Right.
that we just haven't had somebody willing to take that on yet. So those kinds of things is what I'm hoping that we can get somebody to take that risk and take that chance to do something, even if it's a, you know, a student or a group of students who want to run it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, I would love to see a little bit more of that too, especially if that might be something that needs to be like staff engaged first, just to
Mhm.
lead that as opposed to wait for the kids to do it, because it is this just kind of like iffy
Right.
thing, uncomfortable thing potentially for the kids. So I would definitely love to see it, like at least maybe like try to throw one club out there. And I think we've done from all of our committees, like one committee ends up initiates other subcommittees and stuff, but it's just kind of like initiating that idea that.
And the key is to be mindful. What I don't want to do is put out a club for the sake of being able to check a box and then
Yeah.
not have kids get anything out of it, because if that's their first experience, it'll be their only experience participating in something like that. So for me, it's about taking the time to do it right, so that these things become, you know, their own entity and don't need necessarily the adults to guide it, because it's becoming something.
Yeah, that's great.
Right.
I love it. Thank you.
Love the idea of the playbook ambassadors. That was my favorite school committee meeting of 2
Yeah,
years
yeah.
so far. And so I'm just really excited to see sort of how this initiative
Yeah.
grows, and the idea of them at this age, taking that leadership role in something that's so challenging
Right.
is probably a little bit scary, but exciting, I think,
Mhm.
and the way that you're guiding and thinking about that. There's a question that's just been formulating in my head recently, because I have 2 girls, and I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think, you know, when we think DEIB, there's sort of this, the diversity, right? And we're talking a lot about cultural and bringing that in. Can you talk about, like, have you thought about, or are there ways that we could bring in, what's what I'm looking for? Like, in terms of gender,
Mhm.
girls doing, you know, being encouraged to do things that they may not typically be seen in, like leadership and engineering, and you know, bringing in like strong women leaders that are speakers, or maybe boys that are in theater. That's again not something we
Right.
typically. So like, have we thought about that a little bit of?
I think it's a great
In terms of
idea.
gender?
In years past, we've had like, you know, women in science clubs and women in
Yeah.
engineering, and those are important, but as you're talking about it, just thinking about the ability to break down barriers. And the
Barriers, right.
stereotypes that go along with,
Yeah,
you mentioned theater,
yeah,
right? There's huge stereotypes that go along with that.
Yeah.
And some kids really love it, and some kids are just, they want to do it, but they just are afraid of what that might look like. They're not
Yes.
comfortable. So if we can break down those barriers so that that's not a thing, I would be a great opportunity. So you know what? I appreciate the suggestion. It's something that we'll definitely,
yeah,
you know, look to attain.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think we're focusing a lot on belonging, which is awesome because it's a real through line in K to 12 that it's such an obvious focus.
Right.
But I want to pivot a little bit to maybe the E, the equity, that you know, students need to also know the history of
Right.
different groups. And I noticed that you're reviewing curriculum this year. And so, you know, grades 6 and 7 is when they learn world history.
Right.
And it's such a, it's mostly US history up until that point, and then it is again until high school. So it's really like a moment, you know, to go through the regions of the world and make sure that, you know, the students that are represented in our student body have an opportunity to learn the history of their own culture. So it's, you know, it's all in the standards, but, you know, it's finding.
But it also, but that's where a district can really tailor that. So for example, for my, you know, working where I worked previously, you know, we would sit down and talk about, okay, what are the histories that we're not addressing? Right, because we covered the basics, right? Rome, Greece, you know, all of those things you cover, you know, early American cultures. We never got to Japanese history, Korean history, Chinese history. And if you did, Chinese history was the last 3 weeks of school when you're just trying to rush through it. So who's really investing in it? The adoption of the history of India and South Asian cultures is something that we are doing, and I would love for it to become something even bigger, because not only does it represent our population, but it also pushes our teachers to really think about how to connect those things. And so even within those standards, we can find ways. I don't want to speak for Beth and put more work on her, but being able to look at, like, so what is the curriculum and how does it represent? And are there ways that we can find outside of the standards to include these histories that we might not otherwise? And then also looking at it from that perspective too, who's telling the history? And which version of it are we telling? And so how do we incorporate the other side of things too, so that kids are getting a well-rounded experience and understanding of some of these histories.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're thinking about that already.
Oh yeah, always do. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Good evening.
So building on my colleagues, you'll see the, you know, the common themes and thread line right through with intention and purpose in terms of design, pre-K perspective. Start off with just mentioning again, you have your Celtics shirt on today, the playbook initiative. You already heard a lot about that from the LMS students, and we had 2 high school students who are serving as mentors. They were present that evening as well. We're proud of them and their continued partnership with the middle school and sponsorship of that. As you've heard in previous updates, and I'll move pretty brisk pace because some of these things you've already heard from previous presentations, and they're just sort of captured in a different category, but it's worth bringing up again tonight. Implementing a new SEL curriculum focused on belonging and is character strong in our advisory. We have another upcoming character strong session, I believe it's next week. We're incorporating, as has been mentioned several times throughout the year, and by other principals, we're incorporating expanding universal design for learning, inclusive teaching practices. I think you may have already heard this, but Special Olympics once again recognized Littleton High School as a unified champion school. This is something we've been able to accomplish year after year. And I think I wanted to capture something that they expressed to us in a letter. They noted the LHS's commitment to fostering a socially inclusive school climate that emphasizes acceptance, respect, and dignity for all students. That's just as a principal, you know, representing our leadership team here at the podium. That's just a wonderful thing to hear from an outside organization. It's very validating for the work we are committed to. And we did a recent NEAS survey of parents, families, and faculty and students. And that the student survey conveyed that 96% of students report feeling welcome and 98% of students report feeling safe. Of course, we'd like that to be 100%, but we're proud of those results given all the challenges that, you know, students face in today's society and school at large. And we work closely with kids who don't feel as welcome or as safe at times at different intervals during their schooling. Next slide, please.
Sorry, that's Littleton High School students that filled that survey out. They self-reported
Yeah.
96% feeling welcome.
Yeah.
That's.
You know, it wasn't a complete enrollment, you know, in terms of participation. Not sure exactly what the ultimate sample size was of the survey, but for those who completed the survey, that was the result. LHS students, as with other schools, LHS continues to update the school library to include books representative of our student population. Paul Orzick, our The librarian is doing a fantastic job with that. We have unified sports all for 3 seasons. Bowling, basketball, and we have more of an intramural one in the spring. We have had track in the past. The return of the Pals Club, they were just playing this week in the gym after school and having a ball. Really great time. I want to thank Tracy Turner for her work in sponsoring that club. Eric Arnold has been a coach for Unified Sports, so I'd like to recommend him. He's also a special educator in the building. He's also the head of our PACE program, which is a personalized academic comprehensive education, which also exists at the other schools. Certainly at Russell Street and at LS too, PACE. So, it's now all the way through. So that's a wonderful program for our kids with really significant developmental cognitive challenges. And they get a really comprehensive personalized approach to education. You've heard about this before. I think this was on a different slide, previous presentation for climate and culture. We participate, these are things we participate in annually. Great Kindness Challenge with Great Kindness District, Great Kindness Recognized School. We spread the word inclusion. So you can see the purposeful attention to the topic and having themes. Of course, Stop All Bullying in May, but with October is also Bullying Prevention Month. And we'll certainly do things that relate to that topic at that month. Next slide, please. More educational activities. Paul Orzik was kind enough to share with me several of the displays that he has put on outside the library and in the library throughout this year, like History Month, Asian American Pacific Island, the Heritage Month, Women's History Month, Human Rights Awareness Month, LGBTQ History Month. So that's just that starts to capture it, and I'm sure that will continue to build. We have continued professional development curriculum updates that emphasize lessons and practices that Boston University, including inclusion and belonging. We have Kristen McManus, our history teacher, has hosted 3 guest speakers this year, facing history, Holocaust survivors from Bosnia, Cambodia. So we're happy to report that. It's a certainly a difficult topic, and but very meaningful and important. It's Holocaust, genocide education is kind of a requirement for the state, and Middleton High School is certainly attending to that. Next slide, please. So what's next? Well, this might involve you folks a little bit. We have an upcoming voluntary survey of students about their experience with race at LHS. I just sent a notification out to parents. This survey is going to happen. It's being led by students, many seniors, as part of their legacy. They had seen a documentary. It was called Traces of the Trade, and it explores racism and the effects of racism and slavery, even still today, the legacy of that. They were really moved by this, and they wanted to do something to really attend to the culture at the high school. We've talked about some racial things, incidents or occurrences or incidents of racism, or maybe it's a comment, an inappropriate comment by a student. I've spoken to you folks about that at a previous school committee meeting, and they're sensitive to this, and rightly so, and they want to see what student perceptions are about their experience with race at LHS. So this will happen on April 8th. Superintendent and I would like to meet with the students and debrief with them the results. And then they'd like to present to the faculty at the high school on May 15th. And then they would like, if you're willing to have them, they would like to come forward on May 16th. I haven't worked this yet out with the superintendent, but they would like to be added at some point on the calendar. They're on a tight timeline because of their graduation on May 31st. But that's something they would like to do. And if that's not possible, perhaps we can arrange, and we've done this before, with school committee members come and visit them at the high school and go to the classroom. Maybe it's a representative group of this subgroup of the school committee, because I know they have a lot on your agenda. So, but certainly they're going to present to the faculty at the high school their findings. They'll have already discussed it with the superintendent and I. And we're going to try to learn from this experience together and see how it can shape some school improvement initiatives, particularly as it relates to climate culture at the high school. But I'm really proud of these kids for stepping up and being and Kristen McManus has done a wonderful job as their history teacher this year to facilitate this and the process. The other thing that I've mentioned in previous presentations that we'll do at the high school is we'll be conducting focus groups with students focused on DEIB and climate culture. We're going to use some survey items from surveys that have been administered over the course of the last 2 years. There's a vocal survey and there's a panorama survey that we want to use that's specifically, I think, related to character strong. So I'm going to take some of those items and ask the kids about it in person, have that sort of shape the discussion. And also just listen to them, see what kids do, a representative group across grade levels, and pull that together. That's been a goal of mine the year, and I would like to accomplish that by June, and then follow up next fall as well with students, just to kind of monitor, continue to connect with kids. It's another way for administrators to connect with students, but also hear directly from the students what their perceptions are, and how they would like their school to be moving forward. There's not too much to say yet about this, but it is sort of exciting news if it comes to fruition. Littleton Public Schools, I think it was like the director of teaching and learning, that Steele had applied for a $40,000 grant, genocide education grant, which we've been approved for, but it hasn't been funded yet. But it is exciting because it will have ramifications, probably 6 to 12, right? Likely where they'll help to shape some of our genocide education initiatives over the next year, if that is funded. So that was exciting. I wanted to share that with you tonight. And then something I don't think this was a forum I mentioned. I've been talking more and more about this, and even with student leaders, to really boost our new student orientation and have follow-up activities. We do a nice job in August of welcoming students, but then to follow up again with them, check in end of September, beginning of October, and see how things are going. That is the freshmen and anyone new to Littleton High School. And that is put an explicit focus on development and action. And next year, we'd also like to do an assembly presentation. October seems like the right month to do this, particularly as it's a bullying prevention month. But we talk about how students can be an upstander rather than a bystander. And it's not just about bullying, but it's about, you hear that comment that's inappropriate, and it's more powerful when another student sometimes calls the peer out than a teacher or staff member and says, hey, that's not cool. And I certainly would give I could list some students this year who I know who have done that in our stands. I've heard about it later, and I've made sure to go and connect with those kids where someone was being loud and obnoxious, and one of our junior students talked to a freshman student and said, told them to knock it off. That was effective enough. It didn't require any adult intervention. So that is happening. I want to encourage more of that, but of course in an appropriate way. The kids are not getting, where they're not being too tough on the younger kids, but it could be just even a freshman, sticking up to a junior, saying it could be the opposite, and saying, hey, that's not cool, that's not okay, and looking out for other kids and how they're all treated, and that creates that positive, welcoming culture that we want at the high school. So those are a few highlights. At the high school, happy to answer any questions, take any comments.
And this may be for you, or this may be for Beth also. I think there's a lot of activities about what we do with students and families. I'm curious if you probably have talked about this when you talk about professional development, like anti-bias and like stereotype training for teachers. And is that something that we do sort of regularly, or is it something that's offered at PD Day that they can choose?
Well, there has been actually a PD on implicit bias.
Okay.
And so I know that that's happened district wide for us. That was a couple of years ago. So we have attended to that with the staff. It's something like if staff changes over though, it's something I have to continue to pay attention to as we, offer it to new staff. There's been a lot of focus and opportunities, I think, with faculty-led PD for cultural proficiency, some book study groups. There's a whole list that probably Beth has already could provide, but there's a lot of that happening, and it has been going on for a couple of years now.
Okay.
Well, I was so happy to hear that the Facing History in Ourselves class is alive and well with Kristen McManus, because I know there was some worry when Susan Harvey retired that it was not going to continue. So I'm delighted to hear that.
Susan doesn't have to worry.
Yeah. And I really hope we can see those students at a school committee meeting. I'm not sure how active the schedules are, but I would love to have those students come in May.
And I think, whether this is the forum here tonight and like on a Thursday night, I think the point would be to make a connection with them.
Yeah, yeah, and have them.
They would like to have you hear what they have to say before they graduate.
Yeah.
Whatever
And
venue they're comfortable in.
Yeah.
They've asked, I think they said connection with the school committee, and I think it was here.
We'll find a spot.
Great. And I'm so excited about the genocide education grant. That's a
Fingers
big-
crossed, right?
Yeah,
We'll be able to-
So there was a law passed by the state legislature that every middle school and high school student has to have an opportunity to learn about genocide. So it's a heavy lift to make that age appropriate. And I think that's one of the purposes of this grant is to help districts find ways to introduce that difficult topic to students. So it's, middle school and high school, and it's, so I know a lot of districts are wringing their hands trying to figure out how to deal with this requirement that it's in place now. Districts are expected to meet that standard now, so.
The history curriculum already chock full with too many topics.
Right, so it's, it's finding how to teach it within the curriculum. So that's a huge coup.
Well, we're doing it.
Congratulations.
It's a Littleton High School, and I would, there's ways we can build upon it and make it 6 to 12. But it's not just facing history.
Yeah.
Great work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
All right, next up, moving through the agenda, we'll have a financial update by business manager Steve Mark.
Good evening, thank you. So report is in your packet and on the screen. I'm happy to report, as I have been all year, that our budget is in good shape this year. We don't anticipate any budget shortfalls. We have enough funding to cover all of our obligations. We do have some savings, some small savings, some one-time savings in the budget this year that is allowing us to move forward on some small one-time projects. The radios at Shaker Lane School, the handheld radios, we're experiencing some difficulties with those radios working, so we're upgrading our radios to digital radios, which will help the Shaker Lane staff communicate better. The sidewalk at the high school, we received capital funding from the town. 2 years ago, we did some sidewalk repairs at the middle school. However, like all the construction costs, the costs are through the roof. And so, because of the savings we have in the budget this year, we're able to move forward with the high school sidewalk repairs, and cover that small shortfall, without having to delay that project a year and go back to the town and ask for additional funding. So our budget's in good shape this year. So I'm glad to answer any questions.
Me.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm thrilled that the town and school department worked together to include encumbrances a few years ago. That's something that's really important to me as a superintendent, is to see what's out there still that we're committed to. And it's nice to see that in the monthly reports. Thanks, Steve, for advocating for that as well.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, our fourth and final presentation for this evening is a presentation and vote on the Student Opportunities Act. Director of Teaching and Learning, Beth Steele, will present the district's updated 3-year Student Opportunities Act plan.
Thank you. All right, we were just talking about how we should have walk-up songs for we'll make sure that's queued up. There's a lot. I mean, maybe a T-Swift. I am a Swiftie at heart. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think hard about it. One might be hard every time I think. All right. If you don't mind putting the plan up, because I will draw our attention to the data table just momentarily. So as Chairman McCarthy said, I'm here to present our new 3-year plan for the Student Opportunity Act. It was another law passed in 2019 that required all districts in the state for every 3 years to create a new plan that targets specifically disparities that exist within our students and the subgroups of our students. And so, which is why when Justin asked the question earlier about subgroups, this is really the SOA, is diving into our data, looking at our subgroups and finding the disparities that exist. And so at the state level, the state has acknowledged that nationwide, we are a high functioning, a high achieving state when it comes to our education. And so it's important to dig in deeper, right, and see really where can we target to improve. And so at the state level, they identified there are particular subgroups of students where the state is working to enhance their performance and their achievement. And so the Student Opportunity Act and the plans that each district creates really encourages us to do the same type of idea of diving in deeper, looking at our subgroups, looking at where the disparity exists. And so every 3 years, we develop an evidence-based plan that supports reducing persistent disparities in the achievement across our students, across our student groups. And so the plan is in the packet. I'm not going to read or go through the plan section by section. I'm going to kind of give an overview, a high level overview by providing context and just highlighting a few pieces in particular points. So in order to create the plan, like I said, you really have to look at the data and find, we think we know what the disparities are that exist, and the data can either confirm or deny that. For us, fortunately, I feel like we do have a good handle on our data, on our students and our subgroups. And so the data was able to kind of affirm where we were thinking that we needed to target this support. And so to provide context, this is the second plan that we are putting forth. The first plan was in 2020. It lasted 3 years. So this is now just the second plan. It is still relatively new to talk about education idea of having to do this every 3 years. So when we looked at our data, we noticed, or it was affirmed for us, two disparities in 2 areas that we're really focusing in on for this plan. One area is the academic progress for students with disabilities. And a second area is attendance for our multilingual learners, which for the state's sake of reporting, they're continuing with English learners, ELs. While a lot of the other languages change it to multilingual learners. And so when you hear, I'm training myself to transition to that multilingual learner, but the state still uses English learners. So you will see both of those titles. And English learners specifically in the plan, as we are required to document that investing. So attendance for our multilingual learners and for our students that are identified as Hispanic or Latino. And so our goal is to see accelerated progress for these student groups, in particular by implementing evidence-based programs, such as continuing to implement a multi-tiered system of supports, and by implementing high quality and engaging instructional materials that encourage culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. So when we look at the actual data, thank you, this data chart here is demonstrates our MCAS data. And so to point out a few things, because when you first look at it, there's just a lot of numbers, a lot of shorthand, which we're known for in education. So just to provide context to the chart, SWD stands for Students with Disabilities. All the columns that are blue are Littleton specific data. All the columns that are white are the state level data. So we're able to compare ourselves against ourselves, but then also ourselves to the state. The table is broken into 2 pieces. The left columns are 2022 MCAS data. The right columns are 2023 MCAS data. So we wanted to provide at least 1 more year for you to see that data, to provide context to that. So if we're looking at this, and we'll just look at grade 3, for example, you can look at all of the grades that are there, but if we look at grade 3 specifically, across that top, so the first column on the left for the blue column is the percentage that meets or exceeds on the grade 3 ELA MCAS. And so you can see for students with disabilities in 2022, we had 46% meeting or exceeding. In comparison to the state, if you jump over a couple of columns to that first white column, we had 15% statewide. So we were above the state last year when we were looking at this. This is where we want to be, we typically are. And then when we look at all students, it's 64% meeting or exceeding on the 2022 grade 3 ELA MCAS. That is the disparity. right? We're not only we have a better, it's in our favor when we compare to the state in 2022. But it's not equivalent to all students, right? If we look at the 2023 data, you see that disparity actually even stronger. So in 2023, we had 5% of students with disabilities meeting or exceeding on the grade 3 ELA MCAS. Whereas for the full district, for all of our students, we had 56%. So that's the disparity that we are noticing that is from year to year varies, because year to year, the cohort is very significant and will change. Those numbers can change fairly significantly. But we want our students with disabilities to be able to meet or exceed those expectations, as we expect all of our students to. And you can see this straight down through all of our grade level columns, right? What I do want to point out, and what we did point out during our MCAS presentation, right, is that a lot of our students with disabilities, you'll see, end up falling into that middle, that partially meetings column. And so our goal is to provide them that support to get them over the line so they can be into the meeting category. And so we talked a lot about that during the MCAS presentation this year, and it was not the first time we talked about it either, right? So this is a theme that we knew existed. The data is affirming that, which is why for our SOA plan, we are putting a spotlight on it, right? We're acknowledging this is an area that we need some growth and we need some improvement. And so we, for that reason, have included that in our SOA plan. The other area with regards to the data, there's no table for it, but our absenteeism rate. And so for the 22-23 school year, 37.9% of our Ls, or our multilingual learners, were chronically absent across the district. And 39.1% of our students identifying as Hispanic or Latino were chronically absent across the district. Whereas for all other students, it's 14.8%.
What's the definition of chronically absent?
Over 10%. So it's pretty significant to be missing that many school days. And so for those populations to be double or more, actually more than double all students, we really want to dig in. And part of that is asking more questions, kind of figuring out why, right? Why is this happening? So that we can figure out how to support, right? Find that root cause to be able to support that. And so considering the data, right, we then had to look at the evidence-based programs, and Jesse comes out and lists, because it's part of their process of listing what are really solid evidence-based programs that we could implement at the district level. And so we determined what really is going to best support our students, given the situation that we are currently in. So for that, we focused on 2 different evidence-based programs, really their focus areas. And so in the plan, in section 5, it outlines those 2 focus areas. The first of which is 1.2. So it involves implementing a multi-tiered system of support that helps all students progress both academically and in their social, emotional, and behavioral development. So here we're really focusing on creating and making it sustaining comprehensive tiered supports in order for all students to attend school and engage in school. And so that's where we're really looking to bulk our MTSS, which we've been talking about for a couple of years, right? It's an ongoing process, but really ensuring we find out the why in order to make sure that we can put the proper tiered supports in place to have our students coming to school. The second evidence-based program that we are looking at for the academic achievement is focus area 2.1, and that specifically speaks to high quality curriculum and professional development that is really required with that. And so 2.1 is selecting and skillfully implementing high quality and engaging instructional materials that support culturally and linguistically sustaining practices and foster deeper learning. So there we're really digging into supporting curriculum implementation. We are specifically, part of our last plan, something that we've been working on, for a couple of years is the elementary math program. And so we're continuing the implementation of that. We have seen really nice progress with regards to all students learning within that program. So we're continuing the work that we are doing there. And we are also looking at implementing a new comprehensive literacy program, ELA program for K-5 in order to really bolster those supports and make sure that the programs that we are implementing and the practices that we are using are of high quality, that are going to have the best supports for all of our students, especially our students with disabilities who we identify as needing a little bit extra at the moment to make sure that we can have them have accelerated progress towards their achievement. So in doing all of this work, we also have to set targets for ourselves of by the end of 3 years or within 3 years, where do we want to be? What do we want to try and hit, right? So DESE automatically requires every district to agree to one target, which is improving the stance of our lowest performing students. And so DESE is able to calculate, we are able to calculate that group and make sure we focus, let's know who those students are, and let's make sure we provide support for those students. In addition to that, we have committed to 2 more targets that we are looking to improve upon for ourselves. And so we are looking to make progress towards, DESE sets a 3-year target of where they want us to be for increasing performance of students with disabilities in math and ELA. So we are looking to make that progress that they are setting forth for us. We're also looking to make progress toward the target that is being set for us with regards to decreasing chronic absenteeism rates, specifically for the subgroups that we have identified as being high when it comes to chronic absenteeism. And so those are the 3 targets. So the plan kind of lays out, right? We've identified an area of concern. We're talking about how we're going to provide the supports to improve that, and then also how we're going to measure ourselves for that. And so that's what the plan fully lays out. And what we have had several conversations about is that what is nice is that we're not coming to speak with you tonight about something that's brand new that we've never talked about, right? It's continuously improving and looking at the items that we are focusing on through a specific lens, right? Through the lens of our students with disabilities, through the lens of our multilingual learners, through the lens of our Hispanic and our Latino students, in order to make sure that they're able to not only engage, but thrive within our schools and beyond. So that is our SOA plan that we will be submitting. I'm happy to answer questions. It is a plan that we do need a vote on to submit to the state.
Sure. I have quite like curiosity questions, but I don't need to go first.
Do we have anyone able to visit families with chronic absenteeism for a personal one-to-one outreach to find out what the problems are, to your point, to get to the root cause and provide supports?
We do not have an individual, like a family liaison. We have talked about that. It's not within our capacity at this point in time. However, there are individuals within each building that do that outreach, whether it's the principals, it's the assistant principals, it's our adjustment counselors, it's our psychologists that try to create that connection with the family, and whoever is able to create the connection with the family does a lot of that outreach.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear that. I think the personal touch is very important. It's never struggling in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan looks great to me. I don't really have questions about the plan. It's kind of more of context of some of the data that you shared. So when we're looking at that slide with all of the percentages on it, when we look at the all students category, does that all students include those with disabilities as well? Or is it all students excluding those with disabilities?
All students, including all subgroups,
Okay, so the disparity is actually even,
potentially greater.
it's got to be greater because we're, and maybe I missed the presentation on how our previous 3-year plan concluded. But I would be curious what our self-evaluation was of the work that we did over the last 3 years, because while this plan looks great, what really makes a difference is the implementation of those efforts and the money spent. So if I missed it, I missed it, but perhaps we could learn more about that, or maybe we could hear a report on what we learned over the last 3 years and what we're doing differently to try to close some of these gaps, because this is something that I do hear about from the community. Just, I think we probably all do,
Yeah,
but as school committee members, I certainly have heard about this disparity. So I believe the work's incredibly important.
I'm happy to speak to our last plan briefly, and then if more
Great.
information is
Yeah.
needed. So our last plan we submitted in 2020, we really did target math specifically, and our student subgroup that we looked at was our high needs population. And so when you look at high needs, the subgroup of high needs, it's actually inclusive of students with disabilities, of our English learners, of our low income subgroup. And so it's a combination of subgroups that forms another subgroup called high needs. And so we looked at that subgroup during our first plan, and we really wanted to hone in on math. And we knew that we had work to do in order to create better foundational math skills for our students in order to be more successful. And so we had even had conversations at the high school level with our high school teachers simply about fact fluency needed to be strengthened. And that really should be coming out of a strong elementary math program. And so we focused there. We had heard from community members, right, focusing there. And so that was the plan of our first 3-year SOA plan. We feel that we were successful in getting to where we wanted to be with that area for the plan that was put forth. So we were able, because our plan was to implement a high quality curricular resource in math, we were able to do that. We were able to increase our math intervention support at the elementary level. Our high needs subgroup overall improved, which is why for this plan, we're digging and more specifically, right? So the students with disabilities is a group within that high needs group. So what's nice from the last plan to this plan is that we're not, and what I feel is really important is that we're not fully dropping off this idea of supporting our students in math, right? We're continuing that on, and we're digging deeper as to who now needs more support.
You also have to remember that was through the COVID year
Right.
as well, and we saw improvement. So
And that comes to mind immediately, right? A plan gets put in place and boom, we have at least 1 year, if not 2 years of interrupted learning. So that was a curveball that really no one saw coming and was difficult to navigate through. And then also the demographics of the town continuing to change. And out of COVID, also there were some additional challenges as students re-entered the building, things like that made it a little bit more difficult. What percentage of our student population is considered students with disabilities? I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, like not to the decimal, but I'm just curious.
And we're probably around 18%.
18%.
19, I can give you the exact number.
I was gonna say 820, so I feel like 18 to 20%.
Okay.
Is inaccurate.
We've had this conversation, so our identification, there isn't a significant disproportionality with our identification. And sometimes when you have to peel back the layers of the data, you have to compare that against districts that might have disproportionality in other areas. So we are identifying students with disabilities, impacting their ability to access the general curriculum appropriately. Some districts that might have over identification, you might see a larger portion of those students, meeting because it's not actually impacting their ability. Things do factor into this, as well as our efforts to build programming in districts. So we are serving a larger proportion in districts that does
with significant challenges, which will replace that. So you can look at the data without that certain context.
So to meet the definition of student with disability, it's a disability that prevents them from,
They're on an IEP.
they're on an IEP. Okay. That provides good context for me to try to process all of this. Plan looks good. I look forward to not hearing about this just 3 years from now, but potentially a check-in along the way to chart the improvements made associated with this plan and the spend of the money and the continued focus on the subgroups. And I think you're right about the absenteeism, like it's trying to find out why, because once we know why, we can try to solve the problem.
We do have to provide updates, progress reports to the state every spring. So we can plan to share that progress report here when we do that as well, when we submit that to the state.
I just have a quick question about the MTSS. I know we've been talking about that for a while. Do you have some new strategies for targeted interventions for the students with disabilities within the MTSS structure?
So that's part of this work specifically, right? And then even more specifically within this is when we're looking at curricular materials, ensuring that they have the intervention in place, right? That based on the UDL framework. So we're eliminating those barriers so that it's accessible. There's an entry point for all students. And the other piece that Lynn and I have had several conversations on is kind of creating that visual so that we and our staffs can all see, oh, these are the supports that all students can have access to, right? Or here's a little bit extra that certain students might need. So really kind of compiling that, because I think we've done a lot of work and it almost feels a little bit jigsaw-like. And so trying to piece that together so everyone has a whole picture.
That's so important. A document like that is so useful. Something for all teachers to be able to access for all different kinds of learners.
Yeah.
Are we left to try to figure this out on our own, or are there like flagship communities that have done an excellent job with this that sort of model these strategies that we then look to implement? Does the state provide any assistance there with?
The state has provided some plans in the past that they view as exemplar plans. Because each district is so unique that it can be tricky to pinpoint exact exemplars for us to be able to model after. I will say the state is helpful in the sense of if we were to reach out to them and say, what's a strong model of MTSS within the state, they'll be able to point us to a district that will have strong components of the MTSS.
What's the top couple of challenges that come to mind as we try to implement this plan? Is it funding for these resources? Is it not enough staff? Is it not enough work that's gone into identifying the UDL that this particular subgroup needs?
So I think that one of the greatest challenges is time, right? Which we can't create more of. And I say time because we all say there's never enough time, right? But time is, we have what we have, right? What I'm referencing when I say time is that we need to live in this area for a long time in order to fully not only process it, digest it, but then be able to do it and model it, right? And so I think a challenge is at times it feels like we've been doing this for a while. Like, don't we get it now? Can't we move on? Right. And so being able to kind of hold up that mirror and really reflect on, are we really implementing it? What does it really look like? Right. And having those conversations and good practices strongly in place at all levels. So I do think that is a big challenge because it also relates to individual mindsets, right? And changing an individual mindset of whether you've taught for 5 years or 25 years can be difficult. And so that's why time to kind of sit in it and be able to collaborate with others and go see others. And that is tricky, right? Subs are hard to come by. And so for me to be able to say like, hey, I'd love for you to go see this in action in this classroom down the hall. It can be tricky, and that feels like a lot to our educators.
Sure. Time made me think of something. So we only have so much time in the school day, but we have time after the school day.
Mhm.
Do we do anything as it relates to an after-school program or any subgroups to say, hey, there's a study hall after school, we're going to be reviewing this material, or, you know, I know these students get additional support throughout the day and there's some pull-out and there's inclusion, but
Mhm.
perhaps they don't get the support they need at home.
Mhm.
So do we have a formalized process for something as generic as an after-school program where folks can work with them to help them get the work done, review the lessons, and then, you know, by their choice, their school day might be a little bit longer. But they don't have to think about it when they go home and then they re-engage the next day.
So previously, some of our schools have had like homework clubs or extended, right, like a study hall after school, particularly for sports teams that their practice might not start till later. Others could certainly take part in that. It depends on if it's formalized in this moment or not. That's something that we could look at doing. If we do that, then we are looking at staffing, right? Because it would have to be staffed appropriately.
Right.
Support exists at the varying levels within the school day, right? Elementary levels, we have the WIN time. The high school has an academic support center, as does middle school. So we also want to make it equitable in the sense of if it's offered during the school day, our students are there, they can access it. If it's after school, a job might come into play, rides home, right? There's those factors that we have to consider too. So at times we think we're offering this wonderful beneficial support, and then we would need to make sure that it's actually accessible to all students.
A couple of things here I can add. We're looking at reviewing service delivery models at this point in time, and what I mean by that is when students are on IEPs, depending on the academic challenges that they may have more pullout than they're integrated into regular classroom. We're really reviewing that. So it's a philosophical change. We are advocates of inclusivity as long as it's a better environment for them. I think you can do a better job of that as a district. I just want to be cautious here because when we're looking at this subgroup, the ability levels vary significantly, and we have created a number of programs in our district, and we're providing educational services to students that 5 years ago we were sending out of district. So we're dealing with a wider range of ability levels as we're looking at this data and trying to move as many students across that partially needs line as possible. But as we're doing that, we have a different population as well. So every student is required to write MCAS or MCAS alt, depending on, or it doesn't depend on ability levels at all. So I think you need to keep that in mind. And it's a small group of students in each grade. So I guess those are the things I can add to the conversation where we're very methodical about this. And you know, my ask of Lynn many times is and we're moving forward in that is let's really review our philosophical approach to inclusivity with these children. I always believed, and I think everybody in this room believes, that we want to put our kids in front of the most qualified individual to teach. So assistants, for example, should be deployed to assist, but they shouldn't be teaching when we have a teacher that is 10 feet away that has a master's degree and many years of experience as well. So we're really looking at those things closely.
Can I just circle back to something that said? It really comes to individual mindset. I think that's a big component. And I think the work that we've done as a district with UDL, paired with building out a strong MTSS model, those two pieces together are really going to move the needle for our students so that there's individual. I think there's absolutely, there's growth that needs to be made for each individual student and through an MTSS framework, developing very specific targeted interventions. MCAS is, like Beth tells us, is one data point. It's one point, That being said, it is a data point that we need to look at, so we need to develop targeted interventions so that we are moving that needle for each one of those students, whether it's from not meeting to partially meeting, from partially meeting to meeting, from meeting to exceeding. There is growth that can be made in an accelerated way if we have really strong MTSS model. Framework, sorry. Framework.
Good. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you all.
Oh, we need a motion.
Yes, right.
I move that we accept the student opportunity plan for FY 24 through FY 27.
Seconded. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, we can probably move through the rest of this pretty quickly. This is our second opportunity for interested citizens, so if we've got anybody that wishes to be heard, now's your final chance for the evening. All right, we'll move right through the subcommittee reports. If you've got nothing to present, that's quite all right. But if you do, let's hear from you. PMBC is up first.
Nothing other than the high school roof is done. Close that out, right? Yay!
Which section?
Yeah, right. For now.
It's the administrative one. We're working on the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Little wins. Here you go.
all right, excellent. They stack
We
up
did
well.
have the study done, so I had to turn the results of that study over to PMBC. Now we'll put PMBC on what the next steps are.
Start it all over again.
Start with
Yes.
Best of luck with the new roof. Budget subcommittee does not have anything to report this evening. Policy subcommittee,
We're good for now.
good for now, perfect. Shaker Lane Building Committee update.
Would you want?
Do you want to update since you were able to go to the meeting on it?
Sure.
Because I think
Yeah,
that'd be
we
great.
got
Yep.
a dry run meeting on Monday or the real meeting on Tuesday to take a look at the two design firms that we moved forward to MSBA. During that meeting, we were very passionate about requesting an opportunity to interview these two firms. Have a passive understanding of who they are. Anyway, we know that both firms are reputable, they've done a great job, they impressive projects that they've completed, but there's a personal element of this as well. We're gonna be working with this firm for 4 years or 5 years. We want to make sure that we've had a chance to talk to these people and get to know them a bit. Having said that, MSB has scheduled another meeting for April 9th. We don't know what time it is at this point. At that meeting, their team and the 3 representatives from the Shaker Lane Building Committee will interview those 2 companies. And then at that point in time, they will entertain a vote as to who the group would select, including everybody at that meeting. We can make recommendations to them, but in the end, they make the decision. So that's where we're at. Right. But I have to say, I feel really comfortable about the 2 firms that we have. And it's nice to be able to say that. I mean, it's not as if, oh, we have 2. I'm not excited, very excited about both firms. I mean, we can't go wrong, whoever we get. It's just a matter of hopefully to get to know them a little better and see if, our, what we're hoping for matches with what they have to offer and we can work with them.
Great,
It's a great position to be in.
It is.
sounds wonderful. CPAC Basic Rights Workshop.
Yeah, so I have an announcement from CPAC. There's a Zoom meeting coming up April 8th from 6 to 8 on basic rights for evaluation and eligibility. And the program is in the packet, but I think it really it looks like it's going to do a great job of outlining the IEP process for parents, which can be a very daunting thing if you're new to it. So this is a great opportunity offered by CPAC. Again, that's April 8th from 6 to 8 on Zoom. So the Zoom link is on the bulletin. And I also wanted to give a call out to about the caregiver connection. I went to the Kelly had mentioned it a little earlier tonight, that on March 19th, we heard about UDL, and it's that and the upcoming one on DEI, Dr. Khalees Warnham, is coming on April 30th, and that's going to be at the high school at 6 o'clock. But I find these are just so important, I think, for parents to learn about some of these programs and strategies that we keep talking about in the school committee, like, MTSS and DEI and UDL, and, all of these are things that, we didn't have when we were in school, so I think for parents, it can sound like alphabet soup sometimes, So these are really awesome opportunities that are being offered to parents to learn more about it. And the UDL one was incredible. I was really glad that I was there. So highly recommend.
Great. April 8th.
April 8th, 6 o'clock on Zoom for the basic rights evaluation and eligibility.
Solar eclipse day.
It'll be over by then.
It'll be over by.
This will be dessert.
Right. Let's see, if there's no other business before the school committee this evening, I'll just announce that our next meeting is April 11th, 7 o'clock, at the police station. And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
We should adjourn.
Made by Elaine, seconded by Dino, heard the first. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We can adjourn. Thank you, everyone.